After signing the divorce papers, I walked out of Des Moines for good. No dramatic farewell. No screaming in the driveway or neighbors peeking through the blinds. Just the worn breath of winter wind and the faint scent of salt on the front steps from a half-melted snowbag. I didn't pack much. A few boxes. A duffel. The rest I left behind: furniture, clothes, tools. Even the hammer I'd used to fix that crooked deck board Nick tripped over when he was 12. It was still hanging on the wall of the garage, right where he left it. I closed the door gently behind me, locked it. No second glance. That house had been mine in ways no deed could measure. I'd carried its weight for years, paid the mortgage, sealed the roof after that spring hailstorm, rebuilt the porch twice when the wood started to rot. And yet I left like a stranger, like a man who'd just been evicted from a museum of his own labor. It had become clear long before the papers. The silence at dinner, the way Karen stopped finishing her sentences, how Nick began to disappear behind his door, his eyes barely brushing past mine when we crossed paths. It was like watching fog gather on your windshield while driving. Slow at first, then all at once, blinding. I drove west. Montana took me in with open arms and cold air. I bought a modest lakeside cabin, the kind built decades ago by someone who didn't mind solitude. There was no television, no internet, just the groan of pine floors, the creak of frozen windows, and the distant hum of water against the dock. At night, I listened to loons call out across the black water like they were searching for something that had left them too. Some days I chopped firewood even when I didn't need it, just to feel the swing, just to break something on purpose. There was a rhythm to the isolation. Wake, work, watch, repeat. I didn't feel better, but I stopped expecting to. That helped. 3 weeks passed. I didn't contact Karen. She didn't contact me. Then, one evening, I was sitting beneath a cedar tree I'd started calling mine. The bark flaked off like old skin. The cold had begun to settle into my bones in that familiar, hollow way. I was sipping a beer, listening to the soft crunch of snow collapsing beneath itself, when my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. I knew the tone. Yay! Mom's getting married again. Finally, we'll have a real dad. Not just a wallet. Nick. I stared at the screen for a long time. The cold stung my fingers, but I didn't put the phone down. A real dad. Not just a wallet. That line didn't feel like a knife. Felt like silence. Like standing in the hallway of your own home and hearing laughter behind a door you're not allowed to open. I hadn't spoken to Nick since the day I left. Not a goodbye. Not a thank you. Not even the decency of a slammed door behind me. He was 20 by then. Grown enough to know better, old enough to mean every word he didn't say. In the early years, I used to think he'd come around. That kids his age were just blind to the hands that fed them. I believed effort meant something. That if I kept showing up, kept covering tuition, kept replacing his cracked phone every time he accidentally dropped it, one day he'd look at me and say, "You were there. You mattered." He never did. And yet I stayed. Through the tantrums, the silences, the awkward Christmases where he opened my gifts like they were tax forms. Through the birthdays when he forgot to invite me out. Through the Mother's Days where Karen got flowers and I got the dishes. I stayed. I told myself it was enough to be the stable one. That being there, always being there, was the real test of fatherhood. But that message, that shattered whatever fragments of illusion I had left. He wasn't just grateful I was gone, he was celebrating. He thought I had been nothing more than a bank account with car keys. He wasn't lashing out in pain. He was gloating. The worst part? He wasn't wrong. I had paid for everything. His braces, his first car, his rent during college, the emergency surgery for his dog when it swallowed a bottle cap. I paid because I believed that's what family did. That someday, when the dust settled, when he was older, he'd look back and see who stood in the gap. But Nick wasn't looking back. He never would. He'd only ever looked through me, not at me. I put the phone down without replying. I didn't have the energy to dignify it. I just leaned back in the chair, let the cold sink deeper into my skin, and watched the last light drain from the sky. The stars came out one by one, slow, deliberate, distant. That night I dreamed of the house again. Not the house as it was, but as I had built it. The version that lived only in my mind, where laughter came from the kitchen and not the TV, where the porch was always swept, and the mailbox never held bills. Where Nick once called me Dad. Just once. After I spent all night helping him finish a history paper he'd put off until the last second. I remember how he looked up from the printed pages and said it without thinking. Thanks, Dad. Just that. Simple. Brief. Honest. I carried that moment for years like it was proof of something real. A bond forged, even if unspoken. I thought it meant he saw me. I see now it was just convenience. A slip of the tongue, quickly forgotten. Like a stranger holding a door for you. Polite, but not meaningful. He never said it again. After that message, I deleted his number. Not out of spite. Just necessity. Like sweeping up broken glass. You don't keep the shards. You clean them up so you don't bleed tomorrow. I poured the rest of my beer into the snow. It hissed, then vanished. Like I had. I thought of Karen. How quickly she must have moved on. How little weight the past seemed to carry for some people. Maybe he'd proposed at the same restaurant where I once told her I loved her. Maybe she said yes with the same laugh, the same smile. Maybe she even wore the same earrings. People recycle more than just plastic. I wondered if he'd seen the receipts I included with the divorce papers. The financial breakdown of our last decade, the insurance I paid, the loans I covered, the hospital bills I cleared when Karen's mother fell ill. Did she even read them? Did she see the ink and flinch, or just flip past it on the way to the next man? No matter. The mountain kept its silence. The trees swayed, whispering their indifference. I was alone, and for the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like proof that I still existed. Even if no one said my name anymore. I leaned back in the chair, let the wind wrap around me like an old, cold friend, and exhaled. Tomorrow would come. The lake would freeze. The debts would stay paid. But the name they had refused to give me, Dad, would never return. And I had to learn how to live without it. Character count. 7985. They got married in a lodge outside Nashville. Of course they did. One of those hilltop venues where the air is always warm and the laughter is louder than the music. String lights wrapped around old wooden beams. White tablecloths, soft acoustic guitar, wildflowers in recycled glass jars. The kind of wedding where everyone pretends their lives are just starting, even when they're built on ruins. I wasn't invited. I wouldn't have gone. But someone from Karen's side, a cousin maybe, someone who had liked me once but didn't like me enough, sent me a video. No message. No context. Just a file in my inbox titled Congrats. MP4. I watched it once. That was enough. Karen stood under a wooden arch strung with eucalyptus leaves and fairy lights. The man beside her, clean-shaven, square-jawed, just old enough to look dependable, held her hands like he'd earned them. She smiled like she meant it, like the years I gave her had never happened. It was the same smile she used to give me when I fixed the sink without being asked. When they kissed, the guests clapped too fast, like they were waiting for permission. The camera panned to Nick, standing just off to the side in a blue suit, hands in his pockets, grinning like a boy who'd finally won a game no one else knew they were playing. I paused the video on his face. That smile had history. I'd seen it before, when he got accepted into his first-choice college. When I handed him the keys to the used car I worked 2 extra weekends to afford. When I sat through his graduation in the bleachers, soaked in sun and pride, thinking maybe, just maybe, I had done enough. That smile used to mean something to me. Now it just looked like victory. I deleted the video, emptied the trash, and walked outside. The lake was still, flat as glass. A boat drifted near the shore, unmanned, like it had lost interest in being claimed. I sat in the cold, listened to the trees, and didn't move until the sun disappeared. They say time heals, but time doesn't heal. It buries. A week later, I got another message. This one wasn't from Nick. It was from a coworker back in Des Moines, someone who still followed Karen on social media. He sent me a short clip, shaky and half-lit, taken during the reception. The best man was giving a toast. And let's be honest, he slurred, raising his glass. We all know who's stuck with the bill for the last guy. Laughter. Scattered, then louder. Nervous at first, then real. The camera swung to the crowd. Nick was laughing too, head tilted back. Eyes closed. Free. Karen smiled, but not all the way. The kind of smile you give when you're trying to prove something to yourself. That was the moment. Right there. Not the ceremony. Not the vows or the dancing. It was that laugh. That roomful of strangers sharing a joke about the man who paid the bills and disappeared. Me. I didn't respond to my coworker. He hadn't sent it to mock me. Just thought I should see it. Just wanted to show me how fast people forget who carried them. I didn't watch it again. Instead, I wrote a letter. Not to Karen. Not really. I knew she wouldn't answer it. But I needed her to read it. I needed her to hold something in her hands that she couldn't laugh off or ignore. It wasn't a threat. I didn't accuse. I didn't even blame. I just listed things. Line by line. February 2014. Paid $3,200 to repair the roof after storm damage. No insurance. You said we couldn't afford the deductible. I paid it in full. April 2015. Co-signed private student loan for Nick's spring semester. Loan was in your name. I was never reimbursed. August 2016. Covered full cost of braces for Nick after his father forgot the appointment. $4,900. Paid in installments over 18 months. December 2017. Emergency vet bill for your dog. $1,100. You cried. I paid it. May 2019 graduation gifts. $800 laptop, $200 cash. $350 for his suit. Nick didn't say thank you. You told me not to take it personally. The list went on. I didn't embellish. Didn't round up. Each entry had dates, amounts, receipts. I even attached copies. Not out of spite, just precision. I wanted it to be undeniable. I ended it simply. You once told me I made you feel safe. I believed that was love. I see now it was convenience. Now you're truly free. And so are the bills. I printed it on thick paper. Blue ink. Folded it neatly. No return name. No threat. Just a sealed envelope. Then I made one call. The lodge had a concierge. I paid extra to have the envelope delivered during the reception, after the first dance, but before dessert. Timing mattered. I wanted her to read it while the music was still playing. The silence that followed was louder than anything I could have written. The same coworker who sent the video followed up 2 days later. Said Karen had stepped out during the reception. Alone. No one followed her. She read the letter near the stairs by the lobby. One of those tucked-away hallways with the vending machines and emergency exit signs. She came back with dry eyes, but something in her face was different. She didn't smile again for the rest of the night. Another guest, someone I didn't know, just a friend of a friend, tried to revive the energy with a joke about the bar tab. Karen didn't laugh. She didn't even look at him. A cousin asked if she was okay. She said, "Yeah, I just remembered something I forgot." That line stuck with me, like she had rehearsed it, like it wasn't just something she said. It was something she lived. She had forgotten. Forgotten the man who fixed her sink at midnight. Forgotten the hours I spent on the phone with the financial aid office to keep Nick enrolled after he failed freshman chemistry. Forgotten the flu I caught one winter from sleeping on the couch while Nick had the house to himself. Forgotten that love, real love, isn't loud. It's silent. It's steady. It doesn't dance under fairy lights or toast at the open bar. It shows up when everyone else forgets to. She forgot. And the wedding went on. There was cake. Dancing. Another round of toasts. Nick gave one too short, smug, forgettable. He talked about second chances and how real family isn't always blood. But it isn't just who pays the rent either. I heard that part secondhand. It made me laugh once. A bitter sound in an empty room. After that night, no one spoke about the letter again. But I knew she read it. I knew it landed. Not because she replied, she didn't, but because the shine in her eyes was gone. That performative joy, that glow you fake for photos, had dimmed. I had become the shadow at her wedding. The unpaid tab no one wanted to acknowledge. And maybe that was all I ever was. I didn't write the letter to be cruel. Cruelty is a sharp thing, visible, quick, loud. What I sent was something slower, heavy. A slow-pouring truth meant to be carried, not hurled. Like a rock handed gently to someone who doesn't yet realize how far they're about to sink. I didn't accuse. That was important to me. I just wrote facts, dates, signatures, receipts, moments she might have passed off as kindness. The sort you say thank you for once and then never think about again. But I remembered them all. I remembered everything I gave. Because when you give without keeping score, the ones you give to always think the score was 0. That's the thing no one tells you. If you don't write it down, they'll pretend it never happened. So I wrote it down. I included a copy of the final tuition statement for Nick's senior year, the one his father never touched. I underlined the payment made on May 3rd, 3 days after I found out Karen had reconnected with her high school friend on Facebook. I highlighted the insurance policy I added Nick to when he wrecked the first car I gave him. The same car he never thanked me for. The same wreck he blamed on bad brakes. Even though I paid for new ones a week before, I attached the contract from when I co-signed his first apartment lease. The one he moved into with a girlfriend I never met. I covered the deposit. Karen said, "It's what a real dad would do." So I did it. Like a fool. Like a man convinced love could be proven on paper. And that was the core of the letter. The contradiction I needed her to see. You cannot erase a man from your life and still live in the house he built. I ended the letter without drama. No closing line soaked in bitterness. Just one final truth. Now you're truly free, and so are the bills. I sealed it, paid extra for thick paper, let it speak with weight. I gave it to a courier, slipped them $100 and simple instructions. Deliver it after the first dance, directly to the bride. No substitutes. And then I waited. I wasn't looking for revenge. I don't believe in it anymore. Revenge is for people who still care. What I wanted, what I needed, was acknowledgement. I wanted her to feel the presence of the man she'd erased. Not at the altar, not in her vows, but in her chest, right where the warmth used to be. And from what I heard, it worked. The letter was delivered while they were cutting the cake. She stepped away to read it alone. Found a quiet hallway near the back stairs. She stood under an exit sign, reading line after line under flickering red light, the party still echoing down the hall behind her. The music couldn't drown it out. She didn't cry. That part matters. But she didn't smile again either. When she returned to the room, her face was pale. Not ruined, just emptied. Like someone had turned off the lights behind her eyes. The same cousin who'd laughed too hard during the best man's toast tried to revive the mood. Another joke about who'd cover the honeymoon. Something about hopefully not the last guy. The punchline didn't land. Karen didn't laugh. She didn't even pretend. Someone asked if she was okay. She said, "Yeah, I just remembered something I forgot." It was such a Karen thing to say. Smooth, measured, polite. The kind of sentence that doesn't ask for follow-up. But everyone felt the drop, even if they didn't know why. After that, the wedding never recovered. The music played. People danced. But it was mechanical. Too polished. Too forced. The way people behave when they realize they're all pretending. But no one wants to be the one to stop the music. The man she married, I still don't know his name, noticed the change. I'm sure of it. Men always know when something slipped. When the thing they thought they'd won suddenly feels borrowed. Temporary. Like something cracked beneath their feet, but they're too afraid to look down. A week later, Karen sent the first message. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. 2 days later, "Did you really send that?" Still nothing from me. I knew what she wanted. She wanted to argue the details, not the meaning. She wanted to circle the margins, pick apart the tone, say things like, "You didn't have to be so cold," or "You made your point," or "That wasn't the time." But when is the time? When do you finally say, "I gave you everything," and you spent it like it was nothing? I waited. Let the silence bloom. Then the third message came. "I didn't think you'd go through with it." That one made me laugh. Quietly. Without joy. They never think you will. That's how they survive. They live in the confidence that you'll keep showing up, keep paying, keep swallowing, that you'll always carry the weight because that's what you've always done. But people forget. Even mules kick when the burden cuts too deep. I turned off my phone, walked outside, sat by the lake. The water was still. The moonlight broke it into silver veins. My breath clouded in front of me, then vanished. I stayed out there for hours, not thinking, just being. The quiet was the only thing that made sense anymore. In the days that followed, I didn't hear from her again. Not directly, but I felt the shift. That kind of letter doesn't just disappear. It leaves marks. I imagined her sitting with the new husband, reading it again in secret, trying to explain it without using words like regret, trying to tell him why the man before him still casts a shadow across their brand new walls. You can't exorcise a ghost you still owe money to. I wondered if she tried to hide it, if she kept the letter in a drawer, buried under honeymoon photos and thank you cards, or maybe she burned it. But the thing about fire is it doesn't destroy what matters. It just spreads the heat. Nick didn't message me again. Not after his celebration. Not after the letter. Maybe Karen showed it to him. Maybe she didn't. But it didn't matter. His silence was a confession. He knew. He knew who paid for the doors he walked through. He knew who co-signed his freedom. He knew who stood behind him every time he needed something and didn't say thank you. And now he knew who had walked away. I didn't miss him. I missed the version of him I had built in my head, the grateful son. The young man who would one day come back and say, I saw what you did for me. The myth I clung to in sleepless nights. The lie I used to justify why I kept paying even when it hurt. That version died the day he sent that message. Finally, we'll have a real dad. He didn't just erase me. He replaced me. Like a name change on a credit card. The thing is, you can't replace history. You can't repaint a house without scraping off the rot underneath. They'd built something new, yes, but they built it over a burial ground. And some truths don't stay buried. They leak through the cracks. I wasn't expecting calls. That's not false humility, just a fact. You don't spend years being treated like wallpaper and then expect anyone to notice when you peel away. I didn't wait by the phone. I didn't check the screen at night. I let the silence fill the cabin like smoke. Thick, still, a kind of peace you only get after fire. But they came anyway. The first was from her. Just a text. Can we talk? Short, soft, measured. The way you speak when you want something without sounding like you want it. I didn't respond. 12 hours later. Another. Did you really send that? Not angry, just stunned. As if I had broken a rule she never knew she was following, or maybe one she never thought I would. I stared at the message for a long time, not because I didn't know what to say, but because there was nothing left that hadn't already been said. That letter was the last conversation. Everything else would just be noise. I set the phone down, left it on the table, walked to the edge of the lake, where the ice was beginning to harden along the banks. Winter in Montana doesn't ask permission. It just arrives, quiet and absolute. The air burned my lungs. I stood there for a while, hands buried in my coat, watching the stillness. No birds, no wind, just the world holding its breath. I didn't miss Des Moines. I didn't miss the house, or the neighborhood, or the street where Nick used to ride his bike past me like I was a tree. I didn't miss the dinners where no one asked about my day, or the birthdays where my name wasn't mentioned. I didn't miss being the man who paid for everything and was thanked for nothing. But I missed being needed. That's the honest part. Not loved, not respected, just needed. It's a strange thing, the way men are wired. We'll carry the weight of a family on our backs until our bones scream. Not for glory, not for praise, just to be necessary. The moment they prove they don't need you, something dies. The third message came 2 days later. I didn't think you'd go through with it. That one stayed with me, not because of what it said, but because of what it didn't. She didn't say sorry, didn't say I was right, didn't ask how I was, just expressed disbelief like I'd broken character. That was always the unspoken agreement, wasn't it? I'd keep giving, and she'd keep pretending it was love. I'd stay quiet, and she'd stay comfortable. I'd make peace with being tolerated, and she'd never have to defend me to her son. I was never a partner, just a placeholder. Someone to fill the space her ex-husband left behind. A man who, at the very least, had the courtesy to leave a scar. I thought about replying. Once. Not to reopen the wound, just to see if there was still blood. But I didn't, because I knew where it would lead. Apologies too late. Half-hearted regrets. Maybe even a request to stay friends. As if the years I spent grinding my soul down to keep the lights on could be repackaged into casual small talk. So I turned the phone off. Let the silence take over again. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like walking away from a grave you spent 16 years digging by hand, only to realize they buried you in it. I started waking up earlier, chopping more wood than I needed, cooking meals for one, reading old books I had forgotten how to love. The cabin had no television, no distractions, just the weight of days stacked on top of each other like driftwood. One morning, I drove into town, bought supplies, some coffee, a new snow shovel. The woman at the counter asked if I was new to the area. I told her no, that I had just returned. She didn't press. People out here don't. They understand that some men arrive empty and don't want to explain why. By mid-December, the lake had frozen solid. The trees were skeletal. The wind howled like it missed something. Still no word from Nick. No apology. No message. No call. Not that I expected one. The last thing he ever said to me was, "Finally, we'll have a real dad." It wasn't anger. It was relief. Like he'd been waiting for this, for me to vanish, for the ledger to be cleared, for the man who paid the bills to become a ghost he could pretend never mattered. I wondered what he thought would happen. That I'd keep paying? That I'd keep wiring money into his future while he erased me from his past? There's something hollow about entitlement. It makes people forget the hand they're biting is the same one feeding them. He used to call me Michael when he was angry. Just Michael. Like I was some intruder sleeping in his mother's bed. Never dad. Not even stepdad. Just Michael. The kind of name you say to a man who works for you, or works against you. That's how he saw me. An ATM in a flannel shirt. And I let it go on for too long. Karen used to say he was still adjusting. She said that when he was 15. She said it again when he was 20. How long do you give a boy to adjust before you realize he just doesn't want to? He wanted the benefits of a father without the burden of acknowledging one. And Karen, she made that easy. Every time I tried to set a boundary, she softened it. Every time I spoke up, she changed the subject. Every time I asked for just a little recognition, she reminded me, "He's not your son." And yet, every bill that came in had my name on it. Funny how biology only matters when it's convenient. The cabin grew colder. Even the fire felt distant, like it was burning for someone else. I started sleeping with extra blankets, listening to the wind tear at the roof like it wanted to pull the house apart. It never quite made it in, but the silence did. It moved through the walls like a draft, whispered at the corners, settled in the bones. And I let it, because silence doesn't lie. It doesn't pretend. It doesn't ask for more. It just sits beside you and tells the truth. That's when it really hit me. The cost of being forgotten. It's not loud. It doesn't scream. It's just the slow realization that you gave your life to people who didn't know how to carry it. And now you have to carry yourself. I started writing things down. Not letters. Not messages. Just thoughts. Lists. What I'd paid. What I'd lost. Who I'd been. Who I could still become. I kept it in a notebook beside the bed. Not because I wanted to remember, but because I needed to stop forgetting. Some nights I still dream about the house. Not the real one. The imagined one. The version where Nick hugs me at graduation. Where Karen looks at me like I matter. Where there's a dinner table with 4 chairs and no empty seats. That house never existed. It was built in my head, with borrowed memories and blind hope. But I lived in it longer than the real one. It took leaving everything to finally understand. You can't force your way into a family that doesn't want you. You can buy them groceries. You can drive them to practice. You can pay off their student loans and fix their sinks and show up to every game they lose. But if they don't see you, none of it counts. Love without respect is just debt. And I've paid mine. In full.